Hello and welcome to our Gem Pursuit. I'm your host Matthew Weldon and I'm joined as always by my trusty co-host Alyce Ketcher. Hello Alyce.
Hello Matthew and welcome to everyone.
This is our Icon series and today we're going to talk about a lady who has had some of the most important and you could say fascinating or controversial gemstones and jewellery in history with some of the best stories surrounding them, not to mention a pretty extravagant lifestyle. Alyce, who are we talking about today?
Today we're delving into the American dream, Evalyn Walsh McLean.
Cannot wait for this one. Let's get started. It's good to get a bit of background first from a lady who got her first diamond at the age of 14. I mean, she was an heiress, but unlike a lot of heiresses at the time, it was relatively newfound money, but she kept in touch with the humble background that her family had, which made her stand out, gave her a streak of rebelliousness, a boldness to her. And I mean, this was captured in her lifestyle.
Absolutely. Well, Matthew, like most good stories, they start in Ireland, Clonmel in particular, and Tipperary.
I wasn't going to mention this part, but I'm glad you brought it up.
So, you can't really talk about Evalyn without talking about how she became an heiress. And this is where the American dream really comes into play. Her father, who was born into very humble farming beginnings in Ireland, relocates as an immigrant to America at the age of 19. He does a bunch of different jobs, like he's a carpenter, he works on construction sites, he works in hotels, and he basically is a grafter. And he notices that people are making a bit of money in the mining industry. And he's like, I don't really know a lot about this. So he kind of dabbles in it a little bit and has no real big success. So then he starts to really get into it by studying and listening to people who are having success in the mines and kind of trying to put together all the information that he can get to see how he can make this work. And in his late 40s, he finally is able to find a mine that has been abandoned, and he finds a quartz vein that is filled with gold. And it continues to produce gold and silver, but it had already been something that somebody else had already dug into, but had just before they got to the gold had abandoned it. So he then started doing this at a bunch of different mines, going back and trying to find, okay, who's done all of the grafting work, and maybe we'll strike it rich with very little effort. So basically it's like the family overnight win the lottery. Right. She's 12 years old when this happens as well. So she would have already kind of like come up in a type of humble beginnings, watching her parents actually her mum's a school teacher, her dad is
carpenter turned gold prospector.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden there's this massive change in their life. Her and her brother are kind of propelled into this kind of very extravagant way of living.
You know, a lot of gold prospectors went out, searched for gold. If they didn't find it straight away, they moved on to the next potential hits relatively quickly. But he was very different in that. He's very methodical, very careful approach to prospecting. And as you said, he found the Camp Bird gold mine, and they were producing $5,000 a day in this mine, which is about $180,000, in kind of today's money, give or take inflation, hard to say exactly. But, to go from nothing really to that so quickly just would be an absolutely enormous change in their life. And the cool thing about Evalyn is that she often went on these trips with him. So even from a very, very young age, which remind me a bit of yourself, actually, because I knew you used to go to work with your dad. And he was a carpenter, actually, at that time.
I wish he had have gone into gold.
Yeah, he could have been opal mining in Australia, maybe. I don't know. But I find that super fascinating as such a young girl that she was out with him, prospecting essentially. And when they struck this mine, he knew how important it was. He also knew the importance of keeping it quiet, and that the livelihood of the family and the future of the family depended on that mine, and being able to secure the position before other people came into it. His wife was at home, and he entrusted the young Evalyn with that information. He was, I wasn't quite clear. It seemed like he was worried that he might die. I guess health wasn't the best at that stage.
There's a lot of stories around mining in the west coast of America, and it was a dirty game. So, if you were to disclose that you had found gold, your life could be most definitely in danger, and you could disappear and nobody know where you were. He had every right, number one, to entrust the information to someone he trusted. It's crazy that he trusted a 10-year-old girl, but also to entrust that information so that if anything did happen to him, that they would be secure. Because if he hadn't have told her and something did happen to him, basically whoever was the next person who came along could say that they found it. But she did write a memoir of sorts. And in it, there's a quote that talks about her father and specifically mining. It says, "But where another man might have gone on being foolish, my father buckled down to learn all he could of mining. He learned from experience, out of the minds of other men, and even out of books. What had cheated them, he used to say, was not a matter of luck, but their own technical prejudices." So
even from books.
I know, even from books. But this is important because I personally believe that there is certain people who have certain lucky elements to their life, but a lot of the time it's coupled with some serious hard work. And it's kind of like a duck. You see the duck on the top, but underneath the duck is actually really paddling hard underneath the water to get to where they're going.
Yeah, I have that picture in my bathroom.
Yeah, so that's really what is going on here. It seems like, he won the lottery, he found a mine and he found gold, but actually he worked very hard to get there. And there was luck involved because the mine had to produce something, but he had a calculated assessment of what he was looking at and took a dig at that. No pun intended. But it does say in her memoir, "Daughter, I've struck it rich," was his announcement. So he knew what he had.
And I think he had a very special relationship with his daughter, and they had another son as well, which should be mentioned, that was 1 year, 8 months younger than Evalyn. The reason we're saying this information is that it's really important, I think, when we come to her lifestyle and her jewellery, to understand her background and how we got there, because in her life, her relationships and her upbringing were fundamental to her journey with jewellery.
So, it goes on. The dad continues to be a prospector, right? But she states that it's not because he had more money than any of them could spend, right? At this stage, he was raking it in, and raking it in so much that, he built the largest house, the largest mansion in the world at the time for $1 million at that time. And it had 50 rooms in Washington, D.C. And it was it's still incredible. It still stands today. It's actually the Indonesian embassy. But this particular building had over 50 rooms. It had a ballroom. It had a cinema room. It was incredible that this family was living in this house. Obviously, they had a whole range of different people that were also hired for the upkeep of the home and gardens, and a greenhouse and animals and anything that these children could have wanted. She even states herself she couldn't remember the excitement of getting something new because she'd got something new every day. So the excitement of getting new things wore off. It's funny you mentioned about her first diamond that was given to her. And that's actually a really funny story about why her father kind of gave a 14-year-old girl a diamond. So there was an actress, her name was Edna May, and Edna May used to wear a very specific hairstyle, and there was a lot of pictures that were circulating around of Edna May as a pop icon of that time. Extremely beautiful features and a hairstyle which went over the ears. So imagine like a parting down the center of your head and then your hair falling down over your ears and then tied in a knot at the back. Now, this particular hairstyle was considered like fashionable the same way maybe like in the 1960s a mini skirt was very fashionable, but fathers don't always like the new fashions of the time. And Evalyn's father thought that a more respectable look for his daughter would be her hair pulled back so that her ears were showing like all of the other young women of the time. But Evalyn was very headstrong and she thought that this was now a part of her personality because she actually wouldn't wash her hair for 4 days so that she could actually accomplish this Edna May look. And so her father was like, how am I going to get this girl to stop wearing her hair that way? And so he said to her, you know, if you wear your hair respectable, back showing your ears, I will award you with a diamond. And so a diamond was gifted to Evalyn and the hair came back off over the ears. So this is her first kind of reward for, I guess, listening to her father.
And again shows, I think, the close relationship the two of them had and set her on the path of jewellery from a very young age. I suppose she was the only girl, and obviously we'll get to the tragedy of the brother. Another interesting point the father said to her, I think, is the wording is a little bit old English, but he said, "Daughter, women who complain of service only have themselves to blame. They don't know how to tip. Be sure to tip beyond the amount to be expected. Those people making their living out of tips. Those people are making their living out of tips. Be generous in such matters. You can afford to do so, so pinch down in anything but tips."
I think that comes from their humble beginnings as well, knowing as well that he worked in the hotel industry. So maybe once upon a time, it was the tips that were keeping him and his family alive during his hard times. And this really is the fulfillment of the American dream. So like literally there's how many songs can you think about in Ireland that talk about Irish people leaving Ireland to fulfill the American dream? There's so many old songs from Ireland that talk about the American dream, moving away.
Thousands Are Sailing by the Pogues. That's a great one.
The songs in Ireland are either songs about a girl that you love, going to travel to America, or being in America and being sad that you're not in Ireland, like missing
There's
Ireland.
another category of songs that we won't get into.
And a category of songs where they want to be
Rebellious
free.
songs.
They want to be free.
Yeah.
They want to be free. So like it's a real poignant part of this story that actually they fulfilled the American dream. This particular family goes on to be one of the richest families in America, even the world at the time. Evalyn is extremely generous with her money. There's a story of her with a boy who's blind and she pays for a doctor to try and restore his eyesight. The doctor's able to restore part of his eyesight. And she said that's the best money that she's ever spent, is restoring somebody's eyesight. There's also stories of the American president not being able to pay for the inaugural ball and her paying for the inaugural ball because the American economy couldn't pay for it. So she paid for it. Like we're talking about excessive wealth.
That sounds so bizarre.
Excessive wealth. And basically every president that was alive during her lifetime, she knew personally. And that is because money talks. So it's really important to kind of like look at this and be like, yeah, she's living the American dream. She has a lot of money. She's generous with her money, but she is a spender. So we're going to get on to the marriage, Matthew, and actually the jewels that come on from there.
This time, the done thing in the US, if you are an heiress to a giant gold mining operation, and they didn't just have the one mine, they had other ones. The thing was you'd search out a European aristocrat, none of those in Ireland,
with a dwindling fortune
and a leaky roof. And and you search out...
Think Downton Abbey, everybody. Think Downton Abbey.
Yeah, but this happens. I see this even today in Ireland, the big country house. They go for sale and they're bought by a .com millionaire. But again, this rebellious streak that we see with Evan, she wasn't into that. She had the opportunity to marry a prince, which she declined. And instead of the title, she chose to get a new car. She ended up marrying her childhood friend instead, who were equally very wealthy as well. But the slight difference was that Ned, or Edward, who she married, they met when they were both 11. It's very sweet. But although he was, in theory, quite rich, he was actually limited to a budget of $1,000 a month. That's all he could actually access.
Yeah,
so,
his dad was clever.
Well, as it turns out, he knew exactly what a son was going to be like. And sorry, like $1,000 at that time, it was a lot of money, right? So, but not for their type of lifestyle. So, and Ned had a very expensive lifestyle, and at the end of each month, all of his outgoings actually had to be subsidized by Evalyn to make up the difference. So, although she had married money, pragmatically, it hadn't worked out that way.
Well, I think her parents knew his parents. So they were the owners of the Washington Post. So extremely wealthy, elite in society as well. This is why I'd say that they had this kind of camaraderie anyway. The reason why the families were both in the same circles is because they were both extremely wealthy. Also, Evalyn's father, Tom, he actually never tried to hide his beginnings. And I think this is the reason why society took them in straight away. A lot of the nouveau rich, as they were known at the time, were very secretive about their past and tried to pretend that they were something that they weren't. Whereas Tom went in and was like, no, I'm from Ireland. I'm from Tipperary, but we struck it rich. We've got gold mine. He was very open and honest about his beginnings. And because of that, society kind of knew that they were a bit rough around the edges, but they were like, oh, we can't really afford to not let them in because they're richer than us. So they were accepted into society. The Washington Post family, Edward Beale was his name. His mother also came from money. So his mother and father both came from money. And he himself was used to the luxuries of their fortune, which tended not to lend itself well to him because he could not rein it in any way.
He didn't want anything to do with society, really,
no,
or high society.
But he had very expensive hobbies.
Oh, yeah, no, he was a spender. But he didn't want anything to do with society, which is how he could probably have, networked and enhanced it. He liked, hunting, dogs, horses, golf, fond of a drink.
And gambling.
Yes.
Loved gambling, drink, and, surprise, surprise, women, which we'll get onto later. But there's a little bit of controversy surrounding the two of them as well, because Evalyn's parents didn't want the marriage to happen.
They thought he was a bit of a
brat. And they kind of ran away and eloped. So
and wasn't didn't they give birth like
5 months later.
Yeah.
So probably a good idea for them to do that at that time. But the parents both kind of came around. Obviously, they had to. But the eloping shows again that Evalyn really had very little concern for what anybody else wanted. What Evalyn wanted, she got. And this is where we get on to basically her honeymoon stage with Ned. And this is where things kind of go into the jewelry spectrum, because this is where they're like, all of a sudden, these two basically teenage children who are now married have been sent off into a honeymoon in Europe. They travel around for 3 months. Their parents gave them $100,000 each, which would amount to about $6 million today.
Yeah, but when I read that, I was like, oh my God, 200,000. Even if that was in today's money, that would be 3 months of staying at the Ritz-Carlton, doing whatever you want.
I don't know what these two were doing. $6 million.
How did they spend all that? However, they actually made a pretty good stab at it.
No. They run out of that money. They're staying in the Ritz and they couldn't pay for their bill. So they get there and she's like, Daddy, please save me. Like literally calls him up from the Ritz. I can't pay my bill. And he sends her another $100,000.
But it wasn't just the Ritz, right? So they bought the jewelry. Like, this is what I mean. They chopped away. They spent $120,000 on the Star of the East diamond from Cartier. So, I mean, their budget was pretty decimated pretty quickly in that one transaction.
Yes, but that's actually that's such a amazing story, because when would Cartier have seen something like this before? She gets the money from her dad, and he says, get yourself a wedding present if you see anything that you like. And she goes into Cartier and she's there with Ned. And, a lot of the time the stories that when they're told not by her, it's a lot of Ned bought her this, Ned bought her that. Actually, Ned didn't buy anything. Ned bought nothing. Everything that was purchased with Evalyn's money. And even then, it's not really her money, it's her dad's money. So her dad is purchasing these very extravagant things under her watch. So it's the kind of money that she's being given, her inheritance that she's been given, she's buying it with her money.
So Ned's parents are pretty clever.
Exactly. My favorite thing that she says about the Star of India is she's standing there and she's looking at it and she's like, Ned, I think it's got me. I think it's got me, Ned. And I'm like, what's got you? Like, come on, girl. You're just like, everybody is going to look at this, the Star of the East and go, it's got me too. But nobody has the buck to put down and actually take it home with them. But she did. And she says, and Cartier let 2 kids walk out of the store with the Star of the East. That's what she says in her book. Pierre Cartier lets the 2 kids walk out with the Star of the East. And I just think that's just imagine today, in today's world, these 2 skipping out like they've just bought a Big Mac.
But I mean, to them, it probably was like, because it was the price was totally abstract because they never actually had to finance it themselves, really. But I mean, the history of that stone is quite unbelievable. Like, it's been owned by Pierre Cartier. Even before that, the Sultan Abdul Hamid. It is disputed whether that Sultan owned it, but then it was certainly Pierre Cartier. He sold it to Evalyn McLean, as you said, as they skipped out of the Cartier store in Paris. It was owned by Evalyn Walsh McLean from about 1908 to 1947, when it was sold. The McLean collection was sold completely to Harry Winston for about $1 million. And then from there, it went to King Farouk of Egypt, which was then returned for failure to pay, which we'll come back to. It went back to Harry Winston, and then went to an unknown collection. And actually, after that, went back to Harry Winston again, and then it's been unsold and unknown where it is today.
And just for those who are listening, the Star of the East is described as a 94.78 carat diamond in a pear shape. And very mysterious, like Matthew said, very mysterious on its origins. But because of the age of the stone, it's believed to have come from India originally. So you can imagine the Golconda mines in India are known for producing diamonds, which are called the first water. And this particular stone, as she so rightly said, has got her. We can understand when we get those particular diamonds in, those Golconda type 2A diamonds, they have a different appeal to the stones that we see on the market today.
Yeah, I love that phrase of the diamonds of the first water. As Alyce mentioned there as well, they're type 2A. And if that's a certain, although diamonds are all diamonds, type 2A does have a kind of a look to it, and it's just the structure of the stone. It has this kind of watery look, and when you handle a lot of stones, you can actually see this look, and they typically come from India. And if you go back and listen to the episode with Jimmy Weldon, he talks about this, and it's so true. They are some of the most beautiful diamonds. But that wasn't her only famous diamond. You cannot talk about her collection and her iconic jewellery without talking about the Hope Diamond.
Oh gosh, the amount, and I hope the listeners are tuning into this one, because I have received so many messages from people requesting that we talk about the Hope Diamond. It's probably one of the most well-known diamonds in the world. If you had to go on a chat show or whatever, and they said name the most famous jewels in the world, that would definitely be in the top 5. So you would definitely say the Hope Diamond. Now, why, Matthew? Why, out of all of the stones in the world, is the Hope Diamond so famous?
It's blue.
Yeah, it's blue, but so
I'm simplifying it there, but that actually is one of the reasons. That's why it stands out. It's blue. If it wasn't blue, it wouldn't actually, in my opinion, be the diamond that it is today, because it sets it apart visually, right? But secondary to that, well, Thomas Walsh, when he first went over to the US and he discovered his mine, he was lucky. But the Hope Diamond is said to be unlucky. And whether you believe in superstition or not, there is an undeniable amount of bad luck that surrounds the people who own this diamond. It could be to do with the fact that accidents happen and, things like that. But when you hear this, we'll go through some of them. It's an unquantifiable amount for this one diamond, I think. So, the origin of the stone, which adds to its legend. We've mentioned this guy before. One of the most famous gem merchants in history, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier. He was a French gemstone dealer. He traveled all over the world, particularly Asia in the mid-1600s. He was quite a methodical record keeper, which is really great because it has detailed gem weights, colors, sizes. So in 1642, there's a record of 112 carat deep blue diamond the size of a man's fist. And, that is probably the first record of this particular stone. Now, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier was,
a stealer.
He is a steal. He was
thief.
Yeah, but he was a scoundrel, but also
a thief.
Mixed well with people respected him, but also he was a scoundrel. So there was a duality to his personality. It said that he took the took the diamond from the eye of like a talisman in a Hindu temple
of a deity statue.
Yes,
is the legend goes. Now, for me, it's unforgivable. It's unforgivable to think that you have the right to to go, number one, go into somebody's place of worship and then remove something so that you can get monetary gain. I hope it was cursed for him, because that to me is just unforgivable. That would be like to the French people now if I went into the Louvre and removed the Mona Lisa. Do you think they'd be happy if I did that?
Well, I think that's happened and they weren't very happy.
No, they weren't happy. And that's what makes me really furious about this story, because the beginnings of it is he has stolen a treasure from somebody, and in particular, something that was considered very sacred and holy to these people. Now, we don't know if this story is actually 100% correct. He could have stolen it from somebody's house. He could have stolen it from a sultan's cap. We don't know. But what we do know is that it was stolen.
Yeah, but his records were so good, and the part that's omitted is how he actually got the piece.
Which means it's stolen.
So, I mean, that's, to me, the modern day version of him being on CCTV. So, but look, it's, what's it, 350, 60, 70 odd years ago. So, you know.
That's like saying that 800 years don't matter, Matthew.
No, they do. No, they do matter. But what I'm saying is it's very difficult to prove. So he returned to France 1645, presented the diamond to King Louis XIV.
Who should have asked where he got it from, but he didn't, because he was like, oh, it's blue.
So
French colour.
Obviously, Louis XIV loved gemstones, loved jewellery, wore them himself. He sold it for 220,000 livres, which was about $75,000 today, not taking into account inflation.
But he also received a noble title in return. So it's like, go over and steal from people that we don't know, and I will reward you with a title. It's sickening.
And this is where the legend begins.
Yes.
It's said that...
This is what I love. Payback, payback.
Oh, payback in a big way. It's said soon after that the king suffered a very slow and painful death. The legend is that Jean-Baptiste Tavernier was also ripped apart by wild dogs in Moscow, but I think that's been debunked. Then in France, as we talked about in our episodes when we were in the Galerie de la Paulin in Paris, and the French crown jewels, the French Revolution, 1789, the jewels were at risk of being stolen, so they were moved to Garde Meuble, or the public treasury, for safekeepings, which actually they were stolen anyway, over a 6-day period in 1792. About 3/4 of the collection was got back, but the Hope diamond, which was stolen, was not retrieved. It was missing for about 20 years. And this is where I love these stories, because in 1830, a large blue diamond, now weighing 44.25 carats, surfaced in London. It's like, oh my God, this miraculous giant blue diamond has gone missing. This one that looks just like it, but slightly different cut to it, has now resurfaced in London. Look, I don't think there's any doubt it's the same stone.
Yeah, Daniel Alyce. He's the diamond merchant who somehow got a hold of this stone. And, basically we've gone through a bunch of hands where everyone who's currently owned this stone has been thieves, basically. Thief, Daniel Alyce, thief. Okay. And then we get to the next person who owns it, which is a banking heir. Banking is another word.
King Louis XIV didn't rob it.
Well, I mean, he didn't ask where it came from, so he is culpable in the
possession
theft.
of stolen goods.
Correct, thief. That's just another fancy word for saying thief.
I'll also tell you another interesting one. If you want to ever sell anything, I found it is not good enough, because I found it is willful theft. Willful theft.
Correct.
If you find something on the street, you can't just, if someone leaves their car open, you say, oh, I just found it.
Correct. You can't do that.
Can't do that. So thief, allegedly.
Daniel
allegedly.
Thief.
Allegedly.
And
caveat that. Okay.
The next owner is a British aristocrat and banking heir. Banking sounds like another word for thief.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I'm joking. Henry Philip Hope. And this is, so it's really funny because actually the name of the diamond changes with each of the owners as well. Because first it's called the Tavernier Blue and then it's called the French Blue. And now it goes on to being purchased by this banking heir, Henry Philip Hope. And it changes from the French Blue now to the Hope Diamond.
What a great name. Like the Hope Diamond. I actually had always assumed before today that it was ironic that it was so unlucky that it was called the Hope Diamond, but it's actually to do with their name.
Yeah.
That's an interesting fact. So he died childless and it was inherited by his nephew, Lord Francis Hope. He was a bit of a gambler. He fell in love with an American lady called May Yoke. Despite their difference in social class, they married and he gifted her the Hope Diamond. And within a year, he fell into debt, declared bankruptcy, and they divorced. He took back the stone. Now, you could say that he was a gambler and, that's why he went bankrupt, but it was within a year of taking the diamond.
And also, Henry Philip Hope dying childless was also considered a curse, a very, very bad luck as well. So, what's connected to this curse so far is a French Revolution, the beheading of Marie Antoinette, who supposedly loved the French blue as well, the death of the French monarchy, a childless banking heir, losing a fortune, your whole fortune and the love of your life, but getting to keep a diamond. And then we move on to the stone then being acquired by Pierre Cartier, who I believe really did believe that there was something sinister about this stone and did not want to keep it in his possession for very long.
He certainly didn't dissuade people of that notion. I don't know if he believed that. He was the real business savvy one who went to Cartier, New York, ultimately. Jacques was in London, Louis stayed in Paris. So he was the real businessy guy. But in any case, the history of this jewel, with this kind of sinister omen, was known by Pierre Cartier. And he definitely leveraged that in his attempts to sell it. Evalyn Walsh McLean, that's how she came into possession of it. She purchased it from Cartier. They must have really loved to see her coming to the door. So when Evalyn was in Paris, Pierre came to her specifically to show her this gemstone. In Evelyn's book, I think she quotes Pierre Cartier, what he said about this stone.
Evelyn's account of this whole story is very different to the Cartier family's story of what they've been able to piece together, even right down to how much Evalyn Walsh McLean believes she purchased the stone for, and actually the receipt that the Cartier family still have to this day of what the price was that the stone was purchased for. On the receipt, it states $180,000, whereas Evalyn Walsh McLean in her memoir states that it was actually $154,000. So, memory of how this kind of transaction came about is a little bit wishy-washy between the two. But as the Cartiers actually have receipts, I would believe the receipts over memory.
But, this is all predicated as well, the prices and the fact that the deal ran into a few payment issues.
Before we get to that, the actual selling of the stone. Okay, so Pierre's a storyteller. He is great at being able to mystify and captivate and allure. It was one of his very widely known talents. He was the businessman, and part of business is being able to educate your buyer and tell them the reason why the item in front of them is so special, without that kind of foresight and knowledge to do that, the stone is a stone, right, at the end of the day. So his words mattered. And he knew this specifically with Evalyn, romancing the stone for her and telling her the stories of its background. So he included every sinister detail behind the curse, stating that the stone is thought to be cursed, that the original founder of the stone was torn apart by dogs, that it was part of the French royal family, that Marie Antoinette had a specific liking towards the stone, although that's never been mentioned anywhere in history. All of this is kind of surrounding the allure of the stone for Evalyn. But then he also kind of states, actually, it's cursed, so you probably can't have it. So then he leaves that lingering there, like, yeah, so it's a cursed stone. And this just makes her want it more. She takes the stone away and, well, she's like, oh no, I don't want the stone. I don't want the stone. I don't want the stone. And then he gives her the stone to take home with her. And then she says, and overnight, somehow the stone works its magic on her and she finds herself wanting the stone.
Yeah, but when he finished the story, before she took it away as well, she just couldn't wait to get in her hands. And she's quoted saying, "Let me see the thing," he said to Pierre Cartier. That's how I imagine this going down. Gave her the stone, as you said, took it away, and she thought she was the most privileged person in the world to be showing this gem. Like, Pierre's a great salesman, right? Great. It was. I don't know if I would say this is not just a stone. I mean, this is an enormous blue diamond. Probably at that time, it might have been the biggest blue diamond in the world. Even today, well, without going into specific examples, we had a blue diamond there for a very short period of time. And that one, which is way smaller, was valued at a serious amount. So anyway, he showed her the stone, took it away. Her philosophy was, bad luck objects for other people tend to be lucky for me, which I think she was rationalizing it. And as you said, her records say the price was $154,000. She paid $40,000, and the deal was then to pay their balance over 3 years, which I think is such an interesting deal to do. Like, who had the stone? Like, obviously she had it, right? But it's very trusting, like, to give someone a stone at that amount.
Well, I mean, when you're so well known, you can't really hide, you know. So I don't think they had any issues with that. They knew where she was. They knew where she lived. She was a socialite. She was, you know, in newspapers everywhere. Her every move, people knew who she was. So it's a bit different than giving it to someone who could, you know, disappear into the abyss. She wasn't going to disappear. And before we continue on, I just wanted, there's a few more
little nuggets of information.
Yeah, especially about the curse. So Pierre embellishes the curse a little bit more. Okay, so in the account that Evalyn gives surrounding the curse, here's some of her own words about it. So she said, Pierre, he said that the stone itself, after Lord Francis Hope had his wife run away from him and he had to sell the diamond because he went bankrupt, that he sold it to a New Yorker. He, in turn, is supposed to have sold it to a Russian nobleman who loaned it to a dancer in the Folies Bergerie. The next day, the legend goes that he shot her. The diamond then passed into the possession of a French broker who went mad, after which it was brought by another Russian prince who was slain by revolutionists. Then a Greek jeweler bought it and committed suicide. The next owner was the Turkish Sultan Abdülhamid. He gave it to his favorite wife, Salma Zubey Abba, who was shot while she was wearing it. And the Sultan himself was later disposed, and the two agents to whom he entrusted the Hope diamond were also killed. It was Salem Habib, a Turk, who bought the diamond back to France and sold it to the Cartiers. So there's many deaths involved in this diamond. And I think it's really important to add those ones to it because he kind of tries to disclose that all of this has happened with the stone. Like Matthew said, she doesn't believe that it's going to be unlucky for her. She wants it, but her mother-in-law does believe in the curse and wants the stone returned immediately.
Cartier obviously refused that. Done deal, bought the stone. There was a bit of a dispute who actually owned the stone then, after even came to a lawsuit. Basically, the agreed upon price wasn't paid. They settled on some portion of it. I'd imagine it was a significant portion, otherwise Cartier wouldn't have settled for it.
Also, an exchange, she exchanged a few of her other jewels, which was a emerald and pearl pendant and diamond necklace, which Cartier accepted as part of the price, which she said they didn't give her as much joy as the Hope diamond did.
We'd have to say that Miss Evalyn McLean gets it remounted to a necklace, which I think was perfect for that stone.
One of the first things she states, Matthew, is unlucky things are lucky for me, right? Unlucky things are lucky for me. However, she contradicts herself first by going, okay, well, I'm going to go take the stone to a priest and the priest is going to bless the stone and remove the curse. Now, it's said when she takes it to the priest and they go to the church and he blesses it, that there's like cracks of lightning and the whole church shakes when it's blessed. And she's like, okay, cool. Like the curse is gone, right? Boom, shakalaka boom, everything has happened. The curse is now gone. She also continues for the rest of her life to not allow children or any of her friends or anybody else to touch the stone because she believes that something will happen to them if they touch the stone. But it won't happen to her. Her son dies in a car accident.
Her marriage didn't go great after that either.
She has this kind of really... It isn't. But specifically, it isn't for herself, but it is for everybody else. And she's going to die on that hill, right? Because she's standing on that hill and she's like, no. All of the things that have happened to me could have happened to me even if I didn't own the blue diamond, the Hope diamond, So they're just things that could happen to me anyway.
I think that's fair, though. That we were talking about when the Hope nephew who inherited it, he was a gambler and he went bankrupt. Yes, he bought the Hope diamond, but was he going to go bankrupt anyway? Was the Hope diamond a crazy, extravagant... Well, he inherited it, anyway, he didn't buy it. So is it just the timing? Because it sounded like he was going that way anyway.
There's too many things for it to be a bit of a coincidence.
Are you superstitious?
I wouldn't say that I am superstitious, but I still wouldn't walk under a ladder because just out of
Would you wear the Hope diamond?
For the night. Not as an owner, as a borrower.
Eventually Evalyn Walsh McLean went broke. Albeit her version of being broke wasn't exactly broke. Right?
Exactly. I'm like, that's one thing that I do not agree with. So a lot of the, especially her memoir, talks about her then kind of living in poverty. Oh my gosh. I'm like, you still have every property that your father ever owned. You still live in a 50+ room mansion.
Yeah.
You still have over...
Her last few millions.
Yeah, you still have over 5 million, and this is back in 1947. So that's a lot of money, plus all of her stocks, all of her assets. And she's known as a hoarder. So all of the stuff and all of the different things that she owns, the artwork that she owns, her parents got Persian rugs. Her parents got French artists to paint paintings for their home. All of that's still intact in all of the properties that she owns. So no, she didn't die broke. And she's got the Hope diamond and she's got the Star of the East and countless other jewels.
74 other valuable jewels were on her, surrounded her deathbed. as she died. So yeah, I mean, broke is a stretch. But let's just say she didn't have the...
I wish I was broke like Evalyn Walsh McLean.
And lived a life of extravagances leading up until that point. So extravagant life with so many fine gems. But if you were looking for this style, this look, Alyce, how would you do it?
One of my most favorite pictures actually doesn't have Evalyn Walsh McLean in it at all. It just has a spread of jewelry with a necklace that included the Hope diamond on a bust on a black velvet background. It's a black and white photo, and it has two women kind of staring at all of the jewels. And it is the picture that's taken of the jewels as they go up for auction after her death, which the auction was used to pay off her debts so that the rest of the family could actually inherit the rest. So this particular picture has the Hope diamond in a necklace. It also has a Star of the East, but it has like an array of Art Deco bracelets, panel bracelets, and quite a few of the pictures of Evalyn Walsh McLean as she's older, she's got layers of these Art Deco bracelets on. She's kind of like lounging with her hand like on her face, kind of staring out a window as you would, thinking about diamonds. And her arm is just encrusted with these Art Deco panel bracelets. And it's one of my like most favorite looks of Evalyn Walsh McLean's. Now, as you look in her earlier photographs when she's younger, she does a lot of this kind of like Queen Mary kind of layering look, you know, with lots of pearls and necklaces, diamond rivieres and that kind of look. But my favorite look of hers is these Art Deco panel bracelets that she layers, like the wrist stack. Elegant, but also very much look at me. And that's, if you're looking to get that look, we can definitely help you. We've got panel bracelets that just to die for. And they are pieces that continue throughout time to be timeless and elegant.
I mean, she loved the limelight, right? And the jewelry reflected that. I think as well, okay, she had the Hope diamond and she had, you know, Star of the East diamond. But I would also be saying to you, if you're looking for this kind of very glamorous, over the top look, you could also be thinking of stones like there's citrine bracelets from the time period. There's aquamarine bracelets. I know we have a very nice aquamarine bracelet. It's in our Christmas magazine. That aquamarine bracelet would have been one Evalyn Walsh McLean would like, I'm sure. You can get that look as well. Sometimes you get diamond set ones that are kind of open work set with smaller stones. Or, of course, if you want to get a larger one, of course, with diamonds, that'll also do it for you as well. I'm also just thinking her Hope diamond necklace. I remember we had a very nice peridot necklace, obviously different color, but very impressive, good size. From similar time period, I love the way the Art Deco period had those other stones. You know, they love the look, but of course, not everyone's buying a 45-carat blue diamond. But it'll be a significant investment. But if you look at aquamarines, peridots, topazes, or citrines, or quartzes, you can definitely achieve this look.
Lastly, the necklace that is in that picture that I was telling you about, it actually has the Star of the East dangling from this particular necklace. Now, the Star of the East wasn't sold with the necklace, but the necklace itself was part of the Jewels, the New York sale in Christie's, their live auction. And that particular necklace was sold on the 15th of October in 2008. And it actually went below the estimate. Well, in between the estimate price. The estimate price was $70,000 to $100,000 US, and it actually went for $98,500 US, which you would expect it to go much higher over that estimate. But
That's 20 years ago now, nearly 20 years ago.
I know, but
Yeah.
you would still expect it because of its provenance for it to go well above the estimated price that Christie's put it in for. But this particular necklace is absolutely stunning. And it still can be seen online today. And it has kind of like these open work marquise panels that go all the way around with very large diamonds. Each of those panels are connected by a circular link that is also encrusted with diamonds. And the circular link actually would have the removable drop of the Star of the East that could come off the end of it, and that's in the picture. And that look can be really beautifully achieved without the Star of India, again, with those panel bracelets connected to each other so you can wear it around the neck. So really innovative ways, but the look is still able to be accomplished with jewels that we have today. Just for our wonderful listeners out there, we are doing our gem trivial pursuit. Because I have spoken to a lot of our listeners and a lot of them have sided with me that sounds like Matthew gets a little bit of an easier deal.
Sorry, I have not heard one person who said that.
Actually, you have. In New York, there were 3 people who said it.
They just didn't want to disagree with you, Alyce. I don't want to break the bubble.
No,
That's exactly what happened. They were like, okay, we'll say yes. No, Alyce, that's what happened.
It's not what happened. I can actually name their names and get them to write you.
It doesn't matter what their name is.
I just asked them very straightforward. I said, "Oh, what do you think about Gem Trivial Pursuit?" And they said, "Yes, we do believe that Matthew gets easier questions." So Ross has now decided, our producer, that there will be a set A and a set B, and that we can choose which set we want. And then that way it makes it fairer. So Matthew has chosen.
I'll choose whatever set you want me to choose.
No, you said that you just said that what you chose.
Oh, no, I'll choose A, but if you want to change, you can change.
No.
All right.
Matthew has chosen
I just don't want any debates. And
and I am therefore with set B.
And I have several people who've also said that they think the questions are very fair. So, in our very fair set of questions for Gem Pursuit, Alyce.
Well, first off, Matthew is in the lead by, I think, 1 point or 2 points. 1 point? 2 points.
1 point.
1 point,
I believe. Well, I can read my first question, and let me tell you, if you don't get this, you're gonna get this. Anyway, question 1: Gem Trivial Pursuit. Evalyn Walsh McLean. In the 1997 film Titanic, Rose is gifted a blue diamond necklace inspired by the Hope Diamond. But what happens to that diamond at the end of the film?
She stands on the edge of the boat and she's looking at it and she's like, hee hee hee.
Is that your final answer?
And then she goes ploop and she throws it into the ocean.
That is the correct answer. Question 2.
I almost cried when she did that. I was like, no.
I cried about the diamond.
Yes.
Not
about anything else. The diamond.
Finish the title of this 2003 film starring Johnny Depp and Orlando Bloom. Pirates of the Caribbean. The Curse of the
Black Pearl.
That is correct. You got 2 out of 3 for the Catcheroo. And oh my. Who had a hit in 1978 with the song Hopelessly Devoted to You, which also featured on the soundtrack to the film Grease?
Olivia Newton-John. Hopelessly devoted to you. Olivia Newton-John.
That's correct. That's a clean sweep. So I have to get 2. I have to get 2 to stay level. Well, if there is,
I don't know if you're gonna be able to get it.
Go on. Let's have a go ahead.
Yeah. Question 1 for Matthew's Gem Trivial Pursuit. Evalyn Walsh McLean, set A. Question 1. Evalyn Walsh McLean's highly promoted trip to Russia is mentioned in the Cole Porter song Anything Goes. In the lines, when Mrs. Ned McLean, God bless her, can get Russian Reds to say yes, her, then I suppose anything goes. But which legendary crooner recorded this song in 1955 for his album Songs for Swingin' Lovers? Matthew's face. The little nugget that you might latch onto there.
Cole Porter.
Let me just say, the little nugget that you might latch onto there is the word crooner. Crooner.
Crooner?
Yes.
What's a crooner?
You know, they have that certain Michael Bublé-esque type of singing.
So I listened to this song in preparation, and it was by Cole Porter.
So is that your final answer?
He wrote it, though, but you're saying that someone else...
No, I didn't say anything. I'm just asking if that's your final answer.
It's on YouTube. It's very quiet, though. If Cole Porter?
Frank Sinatra.
Ah.
I tried to help you with that. Question 2. In the 1997 film Titanic, Rose is gifted a blue diamond necklace inspired by the Hope Diamond. But who frames Jack by having the necklace planted in his coat pocket?
Billy Zane.
That's the actor's name, yes. But what is the character's name?
No, you didn't specify. You didn't specify.
It does.
You didn't. No, you didn't.
Who frames Jack?
It was Billy Zane.
No.
Jack. Oh, what's his name? Oh.
But you can say who the character is in the film as well.
Gotcha.
Who's the character?
Rose's husband-to-be.
Correct. That will do. Cal Hookley.
Carl. Yeah, Carl.
Okay.
Is the answer down on that actually Rose's fiance?
It says Cal Hookley or Rose's fiance will do.
Husband-to-be. Oh, I got that. Fair and
Question 3.
Fair and square.
Which Dublin band had an Irish #1 in 2013
This isn't going to be good.
with the song High Hopes?
I got high hopes. 2013.
Yeah, and you've got 5 seconds.
Alyce, you have to give me at least time to think about it before they start.
I'm
the
giving
5
you
seconds.
5 seconds.
Westlife.
No.
What?
That's incorrect. The answer is
U2.
Codaline.
Codaline. Would have never got that. So no need to worry about that. So you're 1 up now, I believe. And
Yes, I'm 1 up.
You're 1 up. There's been a swing. Swing in
I think this is gonna work, Ross. I think this is gonna work.
We are gonna wrap it up there in our latest Icons episode. Evalyn Walsh McLean, what a lady. So thank you for joining us on another episode. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Gem Pursuit. That was our penultimate episode, and we have just one more jewellery icon who we are going to be talking about in this series, which is coming up in our next episode. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast because this one is going to be a big one. I know it's one of Alyce's favourites. This episode was produced by Ross Hannon of Tape Deck with research by Veronique Gauguin. Alyce, as always, thank you very much.
Thanks, Matthew.
And most of all, I'd like to thank everyone who is listening. We really appreciate your enthusiasm and interest in the stories of antique jewels and their icons. So for me, your host, Matthew Weldon, that's all for now.